Welcome back to the Prosperity Playbook. You've got Renee, Britt, and Courtney here. And as promised, today we are going to talk about outgrowing relationships and kind of how to take that next step once you get out of one. And this is kind of timely. And Britt is just coming out of a relationship that she kind of wasn't sure for quite a while if it needed to end or not. And then once that happened, it was pretty raw for a while. So she's ready to take the leap and share that journey with us and share it with all of you.
Yeah. And I think to preface too, this doesn't have to pertain to a romantic relationship. This can be a friendship. It can be a business relationship, a career, an identity, a role. I mean, I think this is just about how to shed something that you have outgrown. So I was in a 7-year relationship with my best friend, and the person that I am today is not the same person that I was 7 years ago when we got into our relationship. And I mean, I would say he's not the same person either, but I think the biggest problem that happens in a lot of relationships is sometimes as you grow apart. And that was very much what happened with us. But there was a lot of mental weight and turmoil that I was feeling for, I mean, realistically years, but I think very recently, like the last 6 months of our relationship, I was feeling this weight. And now that I'm on the other side of it, the weight was just, I was staying loyal to a future that I had created in my mind that wasn't actually the reality.
The dream.
Yes, exactly. I was in love with this story that I was telling myself. I wasn't in love with my current reality or where it was headed.
And do you think you were trying to mold it into that dream and it was very resistant?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think leaving any relationship, whether it's a friendship or a job or whatever, can feel so much harder than staying because, you know, maybe things are okay. Like in my scenario, he didn't cheat, I didn't cheat. There was no big thing that happened. There wasn't a moment where it was like, oh, screw him. It was like we very much love each other dearly and we want very different things out of our lives. And so I wasn't staying because I was happy. I was staying because I was comfortable, and I would have been comfortable. Things would have been fine and my life would have been good, but I don't want fine and good. I want exciting and fun and great and growth, and he doesn't, and that's okay.
That is okay. And I just want to take a moment to just acknowledge you for that, because I think you just hit on something that a lot of people find. The good on paper guy is pretty hard to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's easy to say, oh, this is good enough and this is comfortable. And it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And what's the next, you know, what if the next guy is way worse or whatever that looks like? So, you know, I've seen friends blow up relationships like this by doing something bigger, like cheating or doing something like that. Because they didn't know how else to get out of the relationship. And I think you did a really good job of acknowledging your feelings, getting out of it gracefully, taking into account everybody's feelings as much as possible, but also just the insight that you can even see that that's who you were in love with, was that version that you created in your head. I mean, that's pretty awesome that you were able to see that.
And I think you hit the nail on the head too with men and women, I guess, too, can sabotage a relationship because it is easier for them to do that and make you leave because you're uncomfortable,
Right,
than to actually leave themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like it's easier to leave a villain, right? It's easier for whatever reason when there's like a, well, this happened, so we have to separate, instead of a, this isn't meant to be.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think cheating in general, I mean, I may get some hate for this, but I personally think cheating is not a cause. It's more a symptom of other things. You know, somebody's looking for something else that they're not getting in that relationship. And, you know, we've talked a lot about relationships on this podcast. And, you know, if you're not asking for what you need, that's something super important. And, you know, it's a different story. If you're asking for what you need and then you're not getting it, then you got to be willing to walk away. My mom was actually just telling me a story. My parents are also, my mom and my stepdad are separated after 40 years together, which is kind of a wild situation. But she was telling me she was at church this last weekend, and the pastor was talking about somebody from the congregation that was going through a divorce, and one of her friends was like, "Is it you?" And she's like, "No, it's not, but it could be. Shh, I want to listen." And he was saying that, these two people, sometimes if a marriage gets broken, you separate to try to figure out how to get back together. But the only real way to do that is if both people are willing to get professional help. And if one person isn't willing to do that, then you have to get out of the relationship. And my mom said her jaw just dropped because, for a pastor to say, time to end a relationship, you don't hear that very often. So she was like, it's my sign from God.
I actually love that a
Yeah,
lot.
I do
I
too.
never would have expected that. So that's incredible.
I had a friend that asked me, I think I helped her over the last 2 years when she was just in a terrible marriage, and she was terrified to leave and terrified to break her vows, for better or for worse. And I said, well, how much worse does it need to be? I don't think God intends for you to be in this situation.
Yeah.
And that I didn't realize, I was glad my mom told me this story this morning, because I didn't realize that was one of the things that was on her heart that was holding it together for her. Was she's like, what does God think about me wanting to get out of my relationship? And I never thought about it because her and my dad got divorced when I was 3, a long, long time ago, but she's grown in her faith a lot since then. And I think I just never realized that would have been a barrier for her to leave that marriage. So I think she really felt like God was directly telling her, like, Eileen, this
He's
is
like,
it
girl, I
out.
got you. Well, I think that there are definitely some big red flags when it's absolutely time to get out of a relationship. We have done an episode on abuse, and if you find yourself in that situation, or if you have a friend that's in that situation, I do recommend going back and listening to that episode, because we touch on a lot of points specific to that. But I think there's a lot of quiet signs that we have a tendency to ignore because they're not quote unquote bad enough, or, nothing is technically wrong. And that's not a reason to stay. Some things that I noticed coming up in my relationship was I started to feel really relieved when we had space. Like, I went and spent a holiday with my family and he stayed here. And instead of really missing him, I was feeling like a weight off, which that was a pretty big
That is a big
sign I had to pay attention to. If you have to constantly explain or justify how you feel, or if you're not even having those conversations where you can talk about how you feel, you guys are just kind of roommates. If you're fantasizing about a version of your life without this person or job or friend or whoever it is, that was something that started to come up a lot for me. Actually, Renee gave me a gift of it's basically a bucket list journal. And in the beginning of it, it has a bunch of different categories, like, financial and travel and whatever. And you just write down all of the things that you want to do in that bucket. And I noticed that if Forrest was in the picture, I was writing down different things. And if he was not in the picture, then I was writing down other things that I wanted to do. And that was something that I really had to like chew on and sit with when I realized that I was changing bucket list things that are really important to me because of the person that I was with. I felt like I was shrinking to keep the peace.
Interesting.
Yeah. Another red flag is not telling your friends the whole truth. If they're asking how things are and you're not wanting to complain. And I do think a lot of times what I noticed is that I had complained to my friends for quite a long time about things that were a recurring theme and had been throughout my entire 7-year relationship. And I mean, I think part of that is no relationship is perfect, right? Like, every relationship is going to have flaws, and it's okay to just need to get something off your chest and bitch for a minute. But if you are feeling like you have to lie to your friends to paint a better picture because things genuinely are not great, you need to listen to that.
That's
I felt
great advice.
nauseous too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's a good point, Courtney, because there's some physical signs in your body too. I think sometimes you have to listen to your body. It's kind of like we talked about in the last episode. Like, if your life is a movie, what is the audience watching and screaming at the screen? Like,
Leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
that man is an asshole, or he's
Why are
toxic,
you
or
putting
you're
up
too
with
good
that?
for this, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
So I love this. I think that what you're talking about right now of the signs that it really is enough is such an important conversation, because I think it's a very complex issue around. I don't think that you want to give up too early either. Like, I'm a big believer that, you know, marriage is hard. Everything worth doing is hard, and you have to put the work in, but it does have to come from both sides. And I think that is one of the big keys. If only one person is willing to put that work in, I think that's a really, really big red flag in my personal opinion. But it isn't probably ever going to be that fairy tale. And I've wondered about that back and forth. We've talked about that on past episodes. Like, what is it supposed to look like? How perfect is it supposed to be? And to be honest, I still don't really have the answer to that. So I think that the signs that you're going through are really, really important and really, really perfect. So what else you got?
I mean, I think, like, there's definitely a big cost of staying in a relationship. And I did a lot of like pros and cons of staying versus leaving. And I talked to a lot of my friends, and I basically just, all of the people in my life that were closest to me could feel me shrinking my life. They could feel me dimming my light because of this relationship that I was in. And I think everybody would like kind of hint towards it. And when I started to really feel this, I went to couples therapy with Forrest, and at that therapy session basically was like, I'm already out the door. I need you to be okay. And I don't know how to do that. So here we are. And I had asked him to go to therapy with me previously, and he said no to that, which I think I should have listened a lot more to that at that point in time. But when all of these feelings came up, I sat down with a lot of the people closest to me, and I was like, I need you to just like be honest with me and tell me how it is, tell me how you see me. And basically everybody was like, Britt, it's time to go. Like, you have an anchor that is holding you in place, and you are like, you have wings and a propeller and a rocket, and you're trying so hard to get off of the ground, but you have this anchor, and you're not going to be able to do the things that you want to do if you don't cut it away. And everyone was right.
Well, I want to go back to something you said in the very beginning. You said the phrase grow apart. And for some reason, when you said that, it kind of triggered in my brain that I've never thought through the actual meaning of that. But I think it's exactly perfect in this case, because the way that I see it, and I don't know Forrest, but for you, I see you as growing and going to achieve the next thing and the big goals. And like, you have a lot of things that you want to do in your life. And I think you're a very bright light and very amazing. And from what I understand, that was not the case with him. He was like very content to just have his job and play video games and do whatever. And like, there wasn't a lot of goals to progress. And so when I think about growing apart, it is probably one person growing at a rate a little bit different than the other. And that is going to happen in everybody's lives. Most of us met when we were younger, and we are totally different people than we were now. And to be honest, it's something I've always been a little bit concerned about in my marriage, because I am always such a like, let's go, let's grow, let's do this next thing. And my husband's kind of like, what we have is pretty good.
I mean, I think that something that's so important is like, every single person on the planet is not going to be the same person in 30 years that they are today, right? Like, we are all growing and evolving, at least in some way, shape, or form. So when you enter into a partnership with somebody, you are agreeing to love the future versions of themselves, or of what? You are
of yourself too.
Of yourself too, right? I just forgot how to speak. You are agreeing to love every version of that person, and they are agreeing to love every version of you. But
well, to a certain extent.
Exactly. And that's, I think that all sounds really great in theory. And I mean, if you have open communication and mutual respect, and you have the same core values, and you envision at least similar futures, then the pieces of you that grow can still grow together. But if your core values and what you want out of your future aren't the same, then it doesn't really matter how much growth either partner is doing, because you can't go forward on the same trajectory when what you want is so different. And that's really what it came down to for me.
I think that you were the spark in his day from what we've talked about before. And in your day, you had a lot of sparks.
Yeah.
And so that was really dim when you came home.
Yeah. And you know, it's really hard because I mean, I love Forrest so much. Like I love that man, and I hope that he really does a deep dive into learning to love himself, because he absolutely deserves to have the very best in the world. And that's what made this so hard, but I'm also so damn proud of myself for
be.
being willing to step away even though there is so much love. And I mean, I felt myself starting to build this chronic resentment, and I stopped being the partner that I am. Like I'm very much a person that does a lot of acts of service and will go out of my way, and I'll be out shopping and I'll see something at the store that reminds me of my partner, and I'll just like buy it for them and put it on the table with a little note. Or you know, I love to do the little thoughtful things that make somebody feel loved. And I completely stopped doing all of those. I stopped putting in extra effort. I stopped sending little love texts. Like I stopped doing all of the things that are important to me and my core values and how I want to show up. And that was the moment that I was like, he doesn't deserve this version of me either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is another really good one. Just checking in with how you are reacting. And sometimes, like, to be honest, like it's easy to get out of those habits and do those things, and just, especially when you've been in a relationship for 20 years or whatever, you're good, and you know that they're the standby, and you love each other, and you're just kind of going through the motions. But it is important to check back in, and if you are somebody that does that stuff, like think about that again, or what could you do? And one thing to make your spouse's day better or whatever. And if you're not motivated to do that, then it is something to look at and find some communication with them, or draw some boundaries, or maybe it is time to consider whether you want to be there anymore.
I went to Staples yesterday and was getting something for my trip to Mexico, and saw a little travel size contact solution and put that on the counter. I was like, did you notice?
Right.
Exactly.
And also, one thing I've learned about that, like my family just thinks magic things appear in this house, that it's just always perfectly stocked with everything they could ever want. And
your elf on the shelf is just constantly going out and picking up things for you.
Belle is amazing. But so I think it used to bother me when they didn't recognize that I was doing all of those little things. And I also did have to check myself and realize, you know what, I'm doing these things because it makes me feel good. And I don't need them to say, oh, wow, look at that, I got toothpaste again. Like, you know, that's not very realistic that they're going to do that. So I think you can not be tied to the outcome of what you get back from doing those things. You're just doing that for you.
I just had this conversation with my dad. If you haven't read about love languages, it's pretty fascinating.
Yes.
And basically, we all have different ways that we like to give and receive love. And on exactly that note, like my dad is very much an acts of service guy. He will do all of the things for all of the people, and then gets really frustrated when he's not getting any of that in return. But they might be, you know, sending words of affirmation, or they might be physical touch. Like they might be showing love the way that they like to give love, but he's just like not receiving it because it's so different. And so in a relationship or a friendship, I think that it's really important to have those conversations and, you know, to talk about how you like to give and receive love, because maybe it's not that they don't want to or that things are falling apart. Maybe it's that they are showing you so much love, but they don't actually know the way that you want to receive it. So it's definitely worth having that conversation to make sure that you're on the same page instead of just assuming that you're not meant to be together.
I quickly just had to think, what are mine?
Well, and I think that is a good key. Like pick up that book. I think it is called Love Languages. If not, or Google it. I guarantee you can find a YouTube video about it, or something that will give you those love languages in 5 minutes if you're not a reader. And recognize what yours are and what your spouse's are, because chances are they are very different. And it was a game changer. We took a marriage class actually when I was pregnant with my daughter, and that was one of the things we learned. And I do not think we would be married to this day if we hadn't learned that, because it was so frustrating for me. Why I was like, why is he not doing the things I want, and why am I doing these things and he doesn't care? And because we have completely different love languages.
Yeah. I think you two are so cute. I love watching you two interact.
Throughout this process, Britt has got to live with me for a while, so she knows my relationship really well.
It's been the best. I was like, thanks for just adopting me. I love this so much. They have all the snacks in their pantry, so, it's a win-win.
Thanks to Belle.
Yeah, exactly.
We've loved it. So, yes, exactly. Well, another interesting point that my sister actually sent me this week out of just kind of randomly was that women, when a woman starts becoming the breadwinner in the family, your likelihood of divorce doubles.
Whoa.
Because it's emasculating from those traditional roles or whatever. So even if like your husband might be totally on board with that and think like, this is awesome, my wife's going to make all this money. So it's just not saying you shouldn't make more money, because I'm all for that. Like, go make all the money, be great. But just recognize that may put your spouse in a different role, and make sure that they, talk to them about it. Make sure that there is something in there that it isn't bothering them, even subconsciously. Like, even my husband, we've had this conversation in the past where he said, like, I love that you make a lot of money. And he does too, frankly, but he will always say, like, I do still feel like the traditional role is for me to be the breadwinner. He's like, I feel like you make more money, then I got to make more money too, so that I can, because he just wants to. Like, as a man, he just feels like that. And it's not a sexist thing. It just is what his soul feels. He was just born that way. And he's
Absolutely.
like, I can't really change it.
Yeah.
So,
Do y'all do any goal planning for the year together?
kind of. My version of goal planning and his are very different. Like, my business plan is like pages long, and he kind of sits down and plans more like, what does he want? What's this year going to look like work-wise? How many employees does he need? Does he have the right amount of equipment? So he's like 1 year at a time. I like to be like, what are we going to do in 20 years from now? And kind of work it backwards. And so, yes, we plan very differently. There are some, kind of forced conversations there, because I like those. I like to be driven. I like to know what the next thing is I'm working for. I am very good at spending money if I don't have something that it's earmarked to go to. And my husband has figured that out. He's like, okay.
He's like, whoa.
Okay, if we save this much money, then we can go buy a lake house. So make that your goal. And I'm like, okay, yes, yeah, we can do that. Both of us. We're going to put money in. We're going to do this. Otherwise, you don't know.
We took your book that you gave us, the bucket list book, and I needed a diversion from, the sad news that we had earlier about our dog. And so travel always gets me excited, and especially places that I've always wanted to go that have yummy food, especially seafood and fruit. And so we started planning out where we wanted to go in the future. And I have my own trajectory too with my business, and bringing him into that mix and saying, I need help with this, this, and this, so that we can accomplish that. So we can go here, or you can buy that thing you want.
I love that.
Open communication. I mean, we talk about it pretty much every episode. Open communication is so important.
But it's so hard. Feel like I have to really think about how to phrase it or how to bring it up.
Yeah. Well, and I think, that is a big reason that a lot of relationships end, is because one person is trying really hard to communicate and the other person is not reciprocating that. And I think that one of the things that I have kept circling back to over and over in all of this is that if something requires you to betray yourself to maintain it, it's not sustainable. Yeah. And that can be, communication. If you're just deciding to not have those conversations because you aren't getting anything back, they're not communicating with you, they're not willing to meet in the middle, and so you just stop having those conversations, that is you actively betraying yourself. And I also think you don't owe anyone anything, and I just don't want this for me anymore is enough of a reason to leave. And I feel like, especially as women, we feel like there has to be a thing, there has to be a reason, but That's not true. It's okay to just not want something anymore, even if it was something that you really wanted previously.
I think that's a huge, huge point, and it's good to know that and know that not everybody is going to say that to you.
Mm-hmm.
I know you kind of experienced that with Forrest's parents. His mom was kind of talking some shit about you, and somebody that you thought was always your friend, and the dad was kind of coming at you on the finances pieces of it, and not probably just saying, "Oh, this is good for you, Britt. I'm so happy."
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you didn't always get that. So you're right. You don't owe it to anybody else. It's only about you. You are the one that needs to be happy with your decisions, and that's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. It is enough. And it's more than enough, honestly, because if you do choose to stay and you don't make that hard step, you can lose so much self trust. You start questioning your own instincts. Like Renee said earlier, physically, like your nervous system can actually just stay in fight or flight for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And staying teaches people how to treat you, and it teaches yourself what you're willing to tolerate. And I really think that you can do a huge disservice to yourself because by staying, you're actively changing your values. And that can be
Great
really
point.
dangerous.
It can be.
If you
Absolutely.
had known me 20 years ago and 10 years ago, you would have seen a whole different person.
Yeah. I actually think, Court, I think you have a story about Ricky, and you had talked about how it's not a romantic relationship, but there was a version of his life that he wanted to stay in that was harmful. Will you tell us that story?
Yep. Actually, it was a 14-year-old, and he felt like his only option in life was to go to jail. His mom was in prison, and he really wanted to do something to get arrested so he could be in prison. And I had to explain to him, it doesn't work like that. You would never see your mom in prison. You might not even be in the same town, much less the same prison. And they're not going to put kids with the parents in prison. So we had to really unpack that and talk about what he wanted in his life and how to go about getting that. And I'm a big believer in creating the map, whether you're doing something like that, having a conversation, or planning your business plan for the year. You really need to know where you're going so that you can figure out how to get there. So we said you can go to jail, but it's not going to serve the need that you want, or you can create this other path that you want. And he said he really wanted to live in a big house and be like Daddy Warbucks and adopt all the throwaway kids.
Love
and
it.
within a year, he got adopted by the guys in the big house.
That's so cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's so special. Well, and I know Renee has talked in the past about how, you had, when you started to talk about your big goals and dreams and how you wanted to make money, you had friends that weren't there clapping for you and were almost like trying to hold you back. And I think that's another version of the same story where sometimes there are people or circumstances in your life that are actively trying to keep you where you're at.
I think so. Yes, I I wasn't sure what I was really going to actually say about friends in this episode because I have kind of been through the ringer with friends in the last probably 4 or 5 years, and I have a completely different friend group now than what I did back then. Even though I know I've talked about this before, I thought I had like the best ride or die group of friends that there ever was, and I am so grateful for the friends I have now and to be rid of the other ones. That sounds horrible to say rid of, but to not have that be the standard in my life anymore, not have the partiers, not have the people that were talking behind my back. And honestly, this just happened to me again a couple of weeks ago, right before the end of the year. Everybody at my office, these are women I've worked with for many, many years, one of which was one of my best friends that we were pregnant with our daughters together. Like, she's my daughter's emergency contact at school. And everybody left my company and didn't tell me until it was already done. And they did not invite me to go with them. And it absolutely destroyed me. Like, it broke my heart. I was so devastated. Brett, you happened to be here that night. I was a freaking puddle on the floor. And the next day I was kind of over being devastated and I was just pissed. And then now I've kind of moved past it, and I can see that I think those people were tired of being in my shadow, and they were people I've talked about in the past who cheered for me until I passed them. And what happened is now that they aren't the big producers anymore, they didn't feel important, and they wanted to go somewhere else where they did feel important. And if I went with them, that wasn't going to be the case. And so, uh, you know, the shittiest part was they took what my backup plan was. I think it's always good to have a backup plan if you ever need to leave, need to move, need to do something. And they went there, which kind of eliminated it as my backup plan, as far as I'm concerned. So that was the shittiest part. But you know, it is what it is. And I guess one of my lessons is when people show you who they are, believe them. But I also think that they didn't try to do anything malicious. I think they truly did what they thought was best for them and for their family. And I have always been loyal to a fault. And I really mean that, to a fault. At every company, I've always stayed too long. I always want to be the one that stays. And I think what I've had to learn, it's again an unteachable lesson because I still haven't freaking learned it. But over and over again, I've been taught that people aren't going to stay for me. And I need to stop trying to stay for them, stop trying to include everybody in my plans. And at a certain point, you do just have to do what's right for you and what's right for your family. And instead of me faulting other people for doing that, I probably need to get a little bit more selfish on my own side of things. But it doesn't mean that those lessons don't really freaking hurt. And I reached out to my mastermind group of friends when this all happened that night, and I was just the lowest point of my year. And they all reached back out and were like, so many of them had said the same exact thing had happened to them. And it's always kind of those mid-level producers that leave, and you know, it's hard. One of them had said, you know, being at the top is really lonely. Most really good loan officers are lone wolves because nobody wants to be in that shadow. Nobody wants to be dragged along on that journey. And so, so yeah, it's a hard thing. I haven't sorted all that out yet. I don't want it to be awkward between them. It's a small town. We're in the same business. You know, we were friends. Our husbands are friends. Our kids are friends. I don't know how that shakes out, but I guess the moral of the story is sometimes you do have to do what's right for you, and being on the other side of it fucking sucks, frankly. But you know, it is what it is, and it will end up being a thing that really fuels my fire for this year. And it will end up being a really good thing in a lot of other ways, that now it is my branch and I can do what I want with it. And I have more underwriting capacity, so I can get loans closed faster.
Yeah.
So you find the good in it, no matter which side of it you're on, I guess is the moral of the story.
Well, and I really think that just because a relationship or a friendship is over, it doesn't mean that it didn't serve a purpose. You know, like
Exactly.
those friendships, those coworkers, like they served a really great purpose and they were awesome for a time.
Yep.
And it's okay that that time is over now. You know, like maybe the purpose that relationship was meant to serve is complete and now it's time for the next thing. And that doesn't make it any less painful. You can't just be like, yeah, okay, it served a purpose and everything's great. Like it's like a dagger in the heart, but
Yeah.
that's definitely something that I've been leaning into. Like this helped me grow. It helped me lead. It taught me how to deal with conflict.
And what you don't
served
want.
a purpose. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and one of the things one of the gals said to me was, we've grown apart in the last year. And it kind of just came full circle with, that's how you started this podcast, was talking about growing apart. Because again, when I really think about the context of that, it is about growth. And you know, I am on the growth trajectory, and she had repeatedly told me, I don't want to work as hard as you. And it was like her excuse for why
You were
she
more
wasn't
successful.
closing as much.
Yeah.
And it was fine. Like, I didn't care that she wasn't closing as much as me. I was happy for her that she was in a spot she didn't want to do that. That's great.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
Not a thing wrong with it. But you know, it is what it is. So I guess to kind of bring that back full circle, it's not just about romantic relationships. It's friendships and work and everything else that's in there. So let's kind of circle around and talk about some of those practical first steps before you leave, without blowing up your entire life and, you know, breaking people in the process. Sometimes you do have to break people in the process, as evidence, but where do you start, Britt?
I think step one is really getting honest with yourself first. I think like writing everything down without editing, you know, like I, in a previous episode, talked about how when I was pissed at my brother, I wrote a big long letter with all the swear words and all of the emotions, and then I burned the letter. I mean, it's very
Yeah.
similar, like really get honest with yourself. And I really like the question. This question changed everything for me. It's, if nothing changed, how would I feel a year from now?
That's a good one.
Because it's so easy to just like, look at this made up story of, yeah, but if they do this, or if I do this, or if we do this together, everything will be great. And so I think you can't date the you can't date somebody's potential. You can't be best friends with somebody's potential. You can't be in a business that, you're just looking at the potential. Like, you have to get real with what is here and now. If nothing changed, how would I feel a year from now?
I had a friendship that I had to end last year after 30 years because it was not changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was being invited to do things. Even my own birthday was being planned by that person. And she had created all these other friendships that were serving her in a different purpose than just being friends. And she kept canceling our plans to go do something with these other friends.
Mm-hmm.
Even my own birthday that she planned.
Oh, wow.
Just like,
Not making
she finally
a priority.
said, are you upset with me? And I said, yes. And here's why. And
You're like, the fact that you have to ask that question.
Yeah. And then the answer was my answer. So we're done.
Well, good for you. I think it's easier said than done sometimes to get out of those, especially if it's the long relationships. It's comfortable. It's what you know. It's what you're used to. It's your routine. It's your go-to. And there are plenty of times that I miss having like a really good best friend where I can just like send a funny meme to in the middle of the day, or, just knowing that what our Friday night plans are every single time.
Mm-hmm.
But I've really embraced, honestly, it made me really connect more with my husband. I think it pushed us closer together, which has been the coolest thing out of all of it. Is our relationship has grown, and I've really learned, maybe too much, that I like being home. I like just being with my family and not really doing much. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm on the opposite side of that spectrum right now, where like I have really been leaning into my friendships these last couple of months, and it's been really nice and really uncomfortable. All of a sudden I have these evenings at home alone, and I have to figure out what I even like and what I want to do and what brings me joy. And the fact that that's scary is like, well, that's pretty telling. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm here. But
Design that best friend.
exactly. Yeah.
Everything worth doing is scary and hard.
Yes, we can do hard things. Well, as Courtney just mentioned, the next step, I think, is having a conversation with the person and, at least voicing where you're at, whether you're going to therapy. I think a really powerful thing that you can do is go to couples therapy, even if you are ending the relationship. That actually helped us a lot to be able to navigate the exit strategy together.
Great idea.
And build an internal safety network before all of the external change. I mean, I knew where I was going to come stay, and I knew the people that I could call and be totally ugly crying and not able to even say words that would just stay on the phone with me. And, I really like strengthened my support system quietly before I made that big change. And whether you're changing, careers or you're ending a friendship, like make sure that the other pillars in your life are solid and ready for you to lean on them before you're in the midst of it, if you can.
I think that's a great point. And if you do have that support, that's awesome. But also trust yourself too. Know that you are strong enough to get through this. I think sometimes when you try to end a relationship, whether it's romantic or a friendship, you're going to get pushback from them, and they're going to make you feel like you shouldn't and you can't, and you can't do it on your own, especially.
Or it was your fault.
Exactly. Flipping it back on you. And so it takes guts and courage to be able to actually do it and stick with it and actually move. So you're right. I think having a good plan and, telling somebody this is what you're going to do gives you that accountability.
Yeah. Well, kind of to wrap everything up here, I think you can leave without villainizing the other person. That's very much how my relationship just ended. Like, we are on good terms, and everyone knows, like, I don't want you here shit talking for us. That doesn't bring me joy. That doesn't help me. Like, you can leave peacefully. You can honor what was while also choosing what's next. You don't owe everyone access to your reasoning. Clarity is not a group decision. It's
Right.
okay to just decide that you want something different. You're allowed to choose yourself without burning everything down. And leaving isn't failure, and staying isn't strength.
Ooh, I like that. I think that's worth repeating. Leaving isn't failure and staying isn't strength. Just because a relationship didn't work out the way that you thought it was going to when you started, that doesn't mean it's a failure. And even if you want to call it a failure, failure isn't a bad thing. We need to like take away the negative connotation around failing. It just means that that thing didn't work. So go try a different thing.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see where you're going to go next and what you're going to do. And one other thing I would leave with that, and I know I already gave you this advice, but the timing of starting the next relationship, whether it's romantic or a friendship or a job, that is nobody's business but yours. There's no secret time that says like this is when it's appropriate, whether it's again, whether it's a friendship or romantic. It will happen when it's supposed to. You'll feel it when it's right. And you just have to be open to it. Be open to letting yourself feel that happiness. And you talked about earlier about how you hoped that Forrest learned how to love himself. And I honestly believe that is one of the most important keys to any relationship. If you can't find the love for yourself, you will have a very hard time being successful in any relationship because you're going to be looking at that other person to make you feel good. And it is not their job. It is your own job to feel good about yourself. Sure, they shouldn't be tearing you down, but if you're trying to have somebody else build you up, it's going to be a rough go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope that this was helpful. If you are going through heartbreak, I am right there with you, but we can do hard things. And I promise there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Believe in yourself and you will get there. You will be so much better off for making the hard choice. If this was helpful, please share it with a friend, like, comment, subscribe. We love you all so much. And here's to empowering each other one story at a time.
And stay tuned because we've got a special guest coming up for our next 2 episodes and you won't want to miss it.